HighBridge, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Joy of Search, a Google Insider's Guide to Going Beyond the Basics, by Daniel M. Russell, read by Charles Constant. Publisher's Note: in this audio edition, you will hear references to figures, charts, and tables present in the print and ebook versions of the book. 1. Introduction. How you can harness the power of online research. Why you should improve your online researching skills. This book has a simple idea. You too can be a great online researcher. It's not hard and it's not computer geeky, but it's an incredibly useful skill to have. If you can do better online research, you can ask and answer questions better, you can be more accurate, and you find out the information you need faster and more completely. I'm a professional researcher who works at Google on the team that built the search engine. A big part of my job is to understand how people are using Google, in both good ways and less good ways. How do they use it successfully? And how is it that things occasionally don't work the way you'd expect? For instance, sometimes I'll see searchers spend 30 minutes searching for something that should take less than 2 minutes. Naturally, sometimes they find a less than great result. What makes someone a great online searcher? This book makes the case that learning how to be a better online researcher isn't just a good idea, it's something that we all need to know how to do. Consider this. We all know about the 3 R's of education: reading, writing, and arithmetic. The 3 basic skills that schools have to teach, which obviously doesn't include spelling. This book makes the case that there's a 4th R that we should be teaching to all students and adults. That is, research. I don't mean that you'll have to spend your time doing learned investigations into strange and inscrutable depths of obscure history or weird and exotic scientific studies. What I do mean is that everyone can learn to use online information much more effectively and efficiently. Whether you're a student, citizen, parent, or professional researcher, there are things you should know about online research. If you think about it, learning has changed from a school-only activity to a lifelong activity. And just as the person who can learn the best and know the most has a real advantage, so too does being a great online researcher give you a real advantage in school, your work, and life. People fluent in search not only save time, but are also far more likely to find higher quality, more credible, and more useful content. More important, they can ask questions that were impossible just a few years ago. As Samuel Johnson wrote, knowledge is of 2 kinds. We know a subject ourselves, or we know where we can find information upon it. While that's true, the common version of his quote usually leaves off the rest of his paragraph. When we inquire into any subject, the first thing we have to do is know what books have treated of it. This leads us to look at catalogs and at the backs of books in libraries. In Johnson's day, that meant knowing how to do research and knowing that catalogs existed, that libraries were collections of books on topics of interest, and that the back of a book contains an index. It also meant that you knew how to get into a library, many of which were still private and by subscription, that is, by invitation only. Most of the searches that Google sees in a typical day are fairly straightforward. The goal is clear and the results are pretty obvious and unambiguous. But a significant number of searches are not. Searchers might have a goal in mind, but they can't figure out how to express it in a way that will give them what they want. Sometimes their query is precise, but they don't know how to read and interpret the results. It drives me to distraction as a researcher because I know that the searcher is missing just one small but critical piece of information. We try to build as much as we can into the search algorithm, but people still need to know a bit about what the web is and how search engines crawl, index, and respond to their queries. Unlike in Johnson's day, there's no index in the back of the book on the Internet. In a sense, that's my mission, to help people become better researchers, beyond just the basic skill of knowing how to make Google dance to their tune. My goal is to help people understand the larger issues at play here, what it means to be a literate person now, and to continuously learn how to be literate as changes happen in the future. Research is a skill that we all take for granted. We all use Google, and so we assume we're good at it. Yet online research is a critical skill for our future. As the nature of work and education changes, and that really is the only constant we have, we need to bring our students and ourselves up to speed on what it takes to be good searchers. As teachers, parents, and citizens, we need to give them the skills of the fourth R, research, and all the skills and knowledge they need to function effectively as learned searchers. What's more, we're trying to equip them with skills they can use not just now, but also for every information search problem that we confront now and in the future. So what kind of things do you need to know? To start with, there's so much information available online that you might be forgiven for thinking it's all online somewhere. And it truly is amazing what is available with a quick Google search. We live in a time of fantastic information richness and depth, but it wasn't always like this. And what's more, you need to know where the limits are and how to detect when you've hit them. One of the great discoveries of my young life was when I learned that there are books with answers in them that could satisfy my curiosity and let me do research almost instantaneously. Since I was a curious child, I found that by just picking up a volume of an encyclopedia. I could read about many wonderful things: Eritrea, Eisenhower, eggs, development of, Earth, planet, ecru, the color, on and on. All these riches, and just in the volume of the letter E. What mysteries lay in F or G? Why was there a volume X, Y, and Z, and not M, N, and O? That was then, this is now, and it's difficult to find any reference content that's organized alphabetically. Why would you when it's so much faster to do a search for what you seek? Today we have vast resources online, indexed by search engines or sometimes organized into websites and databases, all there for the questing mind to use. All that information is out there, so it's frustrating to see books and articles that assert some piece of information is true, but don't tell you the source or how they know it's true. I find it deeply frustrating to be told something about the world and then have it be unsubstantiated. I've always wanted to know how I could figure this out on my own. This is especially true for books of trivia and fascinating content. You know what I mean, those books and websites that collect the biggest, longest, heaviest, and most unbelievable facts about the world. They're great, but I want to shout at them. How do you know that? Where did you find that morsel of information? Or did you just make it up? Even fact-checking websites and collections of interesting facts don't tell you the story behind the information. If you're lucky, they'll point to something else, but it's rare that they actually tell you how to figure it out for yourself, and that's only if you're lucky. There are also a good number of books that tell you how to use online information resources, but there's a gap in those texts. They tell you the various things you can do, but not how to hook them all together to go from an initial question to a satisfying answer. This book, however, is about how to answer those questions yourself. It's about how to frame your questions and use the various online research tools that let you get the answers yourself, from the beginning of your curious question to finding results via many different online resources. And that's the point of this book. You too can ask and answer your curious questions. Here I'll show you how to find things out by showing you the steps and occasional missteps that I've gone through while doing my own research. Each chapter is a story, one that documents how I've found the answers to questions I've had or have been asked. Along the way, I'll tell you exactly how I did each search step and why. My work for the past 13 years as a research scientist at Google has been to study how people use various kinds of online information sources to answer questions that they have. And it's been puzzling. The online world has an immense set of resources at hand, and yet I see that most people don't really understand how to use it effectively. It's as though we've all been given a Steinway, but we only know chopsticks. Or you just got a Formula One racing car, but nobody ever showed you how to take it out of first gear. We have these amazing tools that we just don't know how to use well. For most simple queries, those in first gear, search engines, such as Google, work extremely well. Search engines' ability to quickly provide answers to these queries is a remarkable testament to their power and scope, as well as the advances in information engineering during the past few decades. But there's so much more these engines can do. Clearly, search engines are different from traditional information sources. They're not at all like the encyclopedia of my youth. Need to know the population of Japan? The number of elementary schools in the United States? the signers of the Declaration of Independence and where they lived at the time? How about the distance from the Earth to the Sun? Ask, and you'll get the answer in the twinkle of an eye. With the rise of easily accessible online searches, anyone can answer these questions quickly, accurately, and at any time of day from their laptop, desktop, or phone. What's more, unlike the encyclopedias of yore, these information sources are up to date. And yet, if you know just a little more about searching, if you realize the depth of information processing available to you, if you learn a touch of sleuthing and take advantage of your new ability to shift ordinary memory tasks to the machine, search engines can become more of an intelligence amplifier for you than just a simple collection of data. That power is not only truly fun to have, but also gives you the ability to understand how things work and see more deeply into the world. Through online search tools, the world is your information oyster, at your disposal 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Those who are fluent in search and retrieval not only save time, but are also far more likely to find higher quality, more credible, more useful content. They can ask questions that were impossible just a few years ago. They can think faster and find solutions more easily. They can quickly get to the bottom of that wild news story they read and the top of their career ladders, too. Whether they're students, professionals, or stay-at-home parents, those who are good at doing online research have a real advantage over those who aren't. Even though research is often thought to be what professional scientists do, the truth is that it's something we all do every day. My mission, the mission of this book, is to help you become better at it, go beyond the basic skill of typing something into Google, and learn how to ask a search engine a good question and understand what it means to be a literate person today and in the future. My goal is to show you the marvelous depth of knowledge at your fingertips, and my hope is to share with you the great joy of finding out. I'll also talk about the attitudes and research styles that will make you more productive and accurate. For instance, a common misconception is that you can search and learn about anything, starting with nothing. The reality is that many research quests are foiled by not knowing enough about how to search. There's a bit of a skill here that we'll talk about. I'll talk about how to start learning something in an area about which you know almost nothing. Unsurprisingly, to learn something, you have to begin with something. But how do you do that when your knowledge is at zero? Chance favors the prepared mind. Why is that true? And how can you prepare your mind? There are skills and attitudes to learn from this book. My goal is to teach both. The skills that let you be an effective researcher and a person with researchy attitudes. Both are important. Mostly, I hope to make you curious about the world and help you learn some of the skills it takes to successfully do online searches to get good, high-quality, believable answers. How to read this book. This book is composed of 16 stories about how I answered some questions that came up for me during the course of my life. These chapters walk you through my stories of discovery, laying out the journey I went through to find out the answers to some particularly interesting questions. Along the way, I'll show you just how I solved them and how you can do the same kind of thing. The first half, chapters 2 through 9, are primarily about tactics, that is, the individual steps you need to know to work with online resources. In these chapters, I'll use a variety of different resources along with some of the tips and tricks that make searching these easier. In the second half, chapter 10 through 18, I'll talk more about the strategies I used to guide my search process. When should you keep searching? When should you stop? How do you decide when a particular research path is leading you to a dry hole? In each chapter, I'll start our investigations with a research question, using this as a way to be careful about what we're searching for. You'll see each research question separated out in the text. For example, where was this photograph taken? Or the research question might be some curiosity about some observation in the world, such as why do lakes sometimes explode? That seems utterly bizarre, and when you follow your curiosity, you'll find out where, why, and how this thing can be answered. Even though it's a simple thing, just writing down the question has the side benefit of helping to frame what you're about to do. I know it sounds too simple to actually work, but it's true. If you take 10 seconds to write down your question before you start your research process, you'll find your process will be much, much more effective. It's almost magical. You have to figure out A, what you're really asking, B, what terms you'll be searching for, and C, what kind of answer will satisfy you. That's what I do in each chapter. I write down the questions and then walk you through the steps I took to find the answer. Instead of just telling you the answer, I'm trying to make it clear exactly how I went from really interesting question to an answer that I believe. As you read these stories, I'll point out how I use each of the tools and information resources along the way. Every so often, you'll see some texts in square brackets like this. Open bracket, exploding lakes in Africa, close bracket. That's a query. The text in the brackets is what I searched for in order to answer a particular question. But note that you shouldn't include the brackets in your search. They're just there to show you where the actual query starts and ends. Every chapter has the online searches I used along the way. At the end of each chapter is a set of research lessons that summarize the things you should have picked up during the story. These are the insights that you can use in answering your own questions. I've also added a bunch of how-to-do-it notes at the end of each chapter. As you read, you'll also see URLs that look like this: bit.ly/TJOS-1-1. These are links to online web pages that are easier to type than a full URL, which are often long and full of strange characters that nobody can transcribe correctly. But the bit.ly or bit.ly links are short and easy to type. This is a nice solution to the perennial problem of how do you put links to online resources in a print document. Note that these links are case-sensitive. Uppercase TJOS-1-1 is not the same as lowercase TJOS-1-1. Be sure to use all capital letters. Also note that you should not include any trailing periods. In the typesetting process, a period is added to the end of a sentence to indicate the end. But if that sentence or citation ends with a URL, be careful not to add the trailing period to the URL you type. You want to type bit.ly/TJOS-1-1 without any extra period. In other words, do not type bit.ly/TJOS-1-1 period. The last two chapters summarize what this book has to teach. It's really true that in this case, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. Chapter 19 offers many of the lessons I've learned all pulled together into a tidy summary that's worth reading because it reflects on all the chapters. Sometimes you can see things more clearly when you see many of the lessons side by side. Chapter 20 gives you an idea about the future of online research. Now let's go find out something amazing about the world. I'll start the next chapter with a photograph that a friend sent to me, asking where on earth he took it. Remarkably, I was able to figure it out fairly quickly just by doing a few online searches. Let's see how. Once you see how it's done, you'll be able to do this too. Onward. Let's do some research. How to do it. A. How to make an effective query. One of the great pieces of search engine technology is that queries can be simple, just a few words long, and you'll often find the information you're seeking. Knowing a couple of things about how search engines work, however, will make your searching far better. You should know that there are a few different approaches to doing a query on a search engine such as Google, Bing, Wolfram Alpha, or DuckDuckGo. The classic query style is to use a few words, sometimes called keywords, that describe the kind of web result you seek. A classic query is best made by choosing a few terms that are central to the idea you're searching for, and ones that you think will be on the web page. Classic queries look like this. Open bracket, Japan population, close bracket. Open bracket, most Olympic gold medals, close bracket. As search engines improve their question handling ability, they're getting better at handling questions posed in a more natural fashion, such as a question-answering query style like this. Open bracket. What is the population of Japan? Question mark, close bracket. Open bracket. Who has won the most Olympic gold medals? Question mark, close bracket. Generally speaking, the best queries are those that use on-topic words for the classical queries or consist of clearly stated questions. When a question query is answerable, the results usually give much more context information on that topic. For instance, open bracket, what is the population of Japan? Question mark, close bracket, will give some contextualized data as well. While search engines let you use some special operators, that is, special terms that modify the meaning of your query, more than 99% of all queries don't use anything special. They're just classical queries or simple questions. In particular, people rarely, if ever, use Boolean queries in their classical searches. Both Google and Bing automatically put an implied "and" between all the terms, although they might drop a term from the list if there aren't any results with all the terms. On the other hand, sometimes using an "or" in the query is a useful way to specify synonyms for a search term. For example, you can look for jobs in either or both of two cities with a query like this: open bracket, Dallas or Houston jobs software development, close bracket. This query means that the search engine will look for either Dallas or Houston on the web pages. But if you don't want anything from Houston, you can use the minus sign before that term to exclude it from the search results. This query will show jobs in Dallas but none from Houston. Open bracket, Dallas minus Houston, jobs software development, close bracket. Overall, the classical queries are best when they use terms that you'd expect to find on the ideal page that will answer your query. There's much more to talk about, and that's what the rest of the book will discuss. 2. Finding a mysterious location somewhere in the world. How to use multiple information sources to zero in on a resource. Where in the world is this? How can you figure it out? A few tips to get started on doing really surprising searches. If you work at Google, you end up attracting all kinds of questions. Some are just requests for help, often in a panic. Can you find this kind of data for me by 5 p.m.? But sometimes you get little puzzles. Bet you can't find, or pictures of someplace in the world with the question, where's this? Here's a picture that a friend sent me, asking not just where in the world this office tower is, but also an apparently difficult question to answer just from the photo. That's the question for this chapter. Research question. Where was the photographer standing when he took this photo? This seems impossibly hard, but with a little ingenuity, it's quite possible. In under 5 minutes, I was able to go from just this photo to his location, and for extra credit, I was able to find the phone number of the office where he was standing. There are several ways to do this, but the simplest one is to start with clues you find in the photo itself. First, ask yourself, what do you see in the photo? In a case like this, you have to start with what you have. Look at the image carefully, noting what you might use to crack this where-in-the-world challenge. There are only a few things that you can really begin with in this picture. Notice that 2 buildings have logos that might be useful, and there's a flag in the lower left corner. If you look very closely, you'll see it's actually a mural of a postage stamp with a cancellation mark, figure 2.2. Otherwise, it's a fairly ordinary urban scene. A quick check of the flags of the world, just do a quick search for open bracket flags of the world close bracket in Google Images, and you can quickly get a lovely diagram with all the world flags. See figure 2.3. You can click on any of these and without much trouble find that this is an oddly cropped Egyptian flag. Is this somewhere in Egypt? A quick visual inspection of the buildings and lay of the city tells me this surely isn't Cairo or anywhere else in Egypt, so that's just a false lead. So let's ignore the flag for the moment and go looking around in the image for more clues. Let's try searching for one of the 2 logos. I searched first for the closest and most obvious logo atop the building labeled TP. I also chose this because the building is clearly pretty new and pretty much a trophy building. I figured there would be a good chance that someone would have put up a web page on it. I tried queries like open bracket TP logo close bracket, but didn't have much luck until I modified the query just a bit with a description of what I was looking for. I searched for open bracket TP office building close bracket, and voila! This is pretty clearly the Telekomunikacja Polska building in Warsaw, Poland. The first result on the search page was to a site that had all the skyscrapers of Warsaw labeled, and this is clearly that building. A quick Wikipedia search for confirmation, and you'll see that all is lining up. This is the TP building, which is now called the Spectrum Tower, formerly TPSA Tower. See figure 2.4. You can also figure this out by doing a Google Images search for the name of the company, open bracket, Telekomunikacja Polska, close bracket. The TP logo shows up on the first page of Google Images results, and that leads you to the Telekomunikacja Polska website. Knowing this, I could easily get the street address for the TP building, 14/16 Twarda Street, Warsaw, figure 2.5. Of course, there are always multiple approaches to finding the location of a photo, and cityscapes are full of clues. If you look carefully at the building behind the TP skyscraper, you'll see another building with another logo, PZU. A quick search for open bracket PZU close bracket or open bracket PZU building close bracket also leads directly to Warsaw and the Poszewski Zakład Ubezpieczeń PZ Tower, just a few blocks away from the TP Tower. Now that we've narrowed the location down to Warsaw, how can I find where the photo was taken from? I tried doing this with Google Maps and looking around downtown Warsaw with Google Street View, but after a couple minutes I couldn't quite get the angle I wanted to verify where the photo was taken from. That's when I realized this was really a problem perfectly suited for Google Earth. Searching in Google Earth for the TP building at 14/16 Twarda Street, I was able to get to exactly the same view I see in Google Maps. But if you turn on the 3D building layers, you get a different perspective. Not only can you see all the satellite imagery, but you can see all the major buildings in the downtown area. I then just used the camera viewer controls and flew around in Google Earth until I pretty much matched the view. Finding the right side of the building was simple, and then it was just a bit of moving the viewpoint around until I pretty much aligned the Google Earth view with the image. Once I had the view matched with the photograph, which I did by lining up the buildings, I literally turned around my view in Google Earth to see the building behind me. That is, the one where the photograph was taken. Figure 2.6. In Google Earth, double-clicking on a 3D building will give you information about that building. I double-clicked on the building, and up popped the information I was looking for. It's the Warsaw Financial Center. Now, how to figure out what office floor you're on. You can estimate it by looking at the altitude of the view, something that Google Earth tells you in the lower right corner. From that number, 120 meters, we can guess we're somewhere around the 15th floor or so. But to get the exact floor? This takes a little extra detective work. How can I figure that out? Easy, but you have to pay attention to some of the details. When I opened the large image, the first thing I did was to scrub around a bit, looking for what I might use for clues. In the process, I noticed an odd blue set of squiggles on the image, roughly in the middle of the photograph. That's a little puzzling. What's up with that? I ignored it earlier, but now I remembered it was there, and so I zoomed in a bit to see, figure 2.7. This looks suspiciously like backward writing. At this point, I needed to play around with the image a bit to see if I couldn't squeeze some more information out of it. So I opened this sub-image in my favorite image editor and flipped it around the vertical axis. In this case, I used Adobe Photoshop, but nearly all image editors can do this. Since it looked backward, I first did a flip horizontally so I can see what it could be, figure 2.7b. At this point, not only does it look suspiciously like writing, but it looks suspiciously familiar. Still, I wasn't 100% sure. I needed a better look. Just to be sure, using my image editor, I enhanced the contrast a bit and zoomed in so I could see the details, figure 2.7c. This is definitely the Google logo. And then I had my aha! It's the Google logo! Surprise! Obviously, my friend was in the Google office in Warsaw when he took the photo. Offices often have large logos of their company, so this isn't that surprising. But now I get the humor. My friend doesn't work at Google, and so this was a bit of a look where I am now kind of inside joke. From there, it's not hard to do a search for open bracket Google Office Warsaw close bracket and find the Google offices in the Warsaw Financial Center on the Google Offices webpage. That page tells us the exact floor, 10th, and phone number. Search open bracket Google Offices Warsaw to find that the information is at the Google Corporate Offices website, www.google.com/about/locations/ Google Warsaw, Warsaw Financial Center, Emilie Plater 53, 00-113 Warszawa, Poland. Phone 4822-207-1900, fax 4822-207-1921. And once you have that information, it's pretty straightforward to figure out that the Google offices are on the 10th floor. Research lessons. 1. Sometimes
Sample complete. Ready to continue?